Today, we're diving into the story of one of history's most genuinely terrifying figures. I mean, this is a man whose name became synonymous with a level of conquest and, well, fear that's almost impossible to wrap your head around today.
You know, we've all heard the big names, right? Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan. These are the rulers who built enormous empires through sheer ambition and military genius, completely redrawing the map of the known world.
But even when you're talking about that League of Legends, there's one guy who just stands apart. And it's not just because of the size of his empire. It's because of the cold, calculated brutality of his methods.
Yeah, you heard that right. His calling card, his great monument, wasn't built of stone or marble. It was a horrifying warning, constructed from the bones of anyone who even thought about standing in his way.
This was a man who didn't just use terror, no, he perfected it. He turned it into an art form.
His name was Timur, or as many in the West know him, Tamerlane. And the impact of his campaigns, it was absolute. See, he didn't just conquer places, he often erased them from existence, making fear his ultimate weapon of war.
So how did someone become this fearsome? A person like this doesn't just appear out of thin air. To really understand the architect, we have to look at his blueprint, where he came from, and the brutal philosophy that drove him forward.
So Timur was born way back in 1336 in Central Asia. And here's the thing, he was not royalty, not even close. He had to claw his way to the top. His hero, his idol, was Genghis Khan, and he had this single, all-consuming goal to rebuild the Mongol Empire, but this time with him in charge.
But Timur had this insight that really set him apart from everyone else. He understood that the most powerful weapon you have isn't a sword or a bow, it's fear. He was a master of psychological warfare. He realized that if you can break an enemy's will to fight, their armies and their fortress walls are practically useless.
And that brings us to the most infamous, most chilling part of his entire legacy, the practice that would come to define his entire reign of terror.
His method was just brutally simple and consistent. Take the city of Isfahan in 1387. He conquers it, but then the people rise up and rebel. Timur's response wasn't just to put down the rebellion. Oh no, it was to make an example so horrifying that no one would ever forget it. He ordered a massacre of the entire city.
And this is where the scale just becomes insane. Some historians from the time claim that more than 70,000 skulls were used to build these towers outside the city walls. This wasn't just random cruelty, it was a message, broadcast to the world in the most gruesome way possible.
Because you see, it was a formula. It was a repeatable, chillingly effective process. Step 1, a city resists. Step 2, it gets annihilated. Step 3, its skulls become a billboard for the next city on his list. And you know what happened? More often than not, the next city would hear the stories, see the towers, and just surrender. Fear did all the heavy lifting for him.
But here's where the story of Timur gets really strange, really complicated. Because this is the great paradox. The same man who was creating these fields of bone also saw himself as a grand builder, a champion of civilization.
I mean, it's just this incredible contradiction. On the one hand, you have Timur the Destroyer leaving a trail of pure devastation across Persia, India, Syria, you name it. But on the other hand, you have Timur the Builder, a patron of arts and science who turned his capital, Samarkand, into one of the wonders of the world. And his capital, Samarkand, was truly legendary. It was filled with these absolutely breathtaking mosques, palaces with incredible blue tiles, and huge centers of learning. But, and this is a huge but, there's a really dark secret to all that beauty. Many of the brilliant artists and architects who built it were slaves, captured and taken by force from the very cities his armies had just destroyed. Samarkand's glory was literally built on the ashes of other cultures. Now, when you have an unstoppable force like Timur's empire expanding, it's eventually going to run into an immovable object. And that collision was about to shake the entire world and mark the absolute peak of his power. By the year 1402, two absolute juggernauts were on a collision course. You had Timur and his terrifying army dominating the east, and in the west, you had the mighty Ottoman Empire, led by Sultan Bayezid I. This was a true showdown of titans.
They finally met near modern-day Ankara, and the battle was a complete catastrophe for the Ottomans. Timur didn't just win, he crushed their army. And in a move that shocked everyone, he actually captured the Sultan himself.
The shockwaves were immense. The Ottoman Empire, which had seemed completely invincible,
was shattered and plunged into a civil war. And in that moment, there was absolutely no doubt about it. Timur was the single most powerful and feared man on the entire planet.
But as we all know, no man and no empire can last forever. So what happened to this massive empire that was literally built on fear? And what is the final legacy of its architect?
Even at 68 years old, Timur's ambition had no limits. He set his sights on what would have been his greatest conquest of all, the powerful Ming dynasty in China. He got this massive army together and started marching in 1405. But the one enemy he could never defeat was time itself. He got sick on the march and died before the invasion even started.
And this really shows you the fatal flaw in his whole design. The entire empire was held together by one thing: his personal will and the terror he commanded. The second he was gone, it all just fell apart.
So in the end, while other great rulers left behind monuments of stone and cities that still stand, Timur built something much, much darker. His most enduring legacy, the thing he's most remembered for, is one written in bones.
So it leaves us with this massive question, doesn't it? Was he a brilliant, visionary strategist who unified a vast part of the world? Or was he just one of history's most savage monsters? And maybe the most chilling thought of all, is it possible to be one without also being the other?